The following is a presentation of Project Independence and WCWP. Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Good morning and welcome to Community Talk Radio. This is Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Rebecca Miller, along with co-host extraordinaire Otto Lohse, and of course, our wonderful show producer, Kristina Lew, who is also the Director of Senior Citizen Affairs for the town of North Hempstead's Project Independence. Good morning to you both.
Good morning and Happy New Year. It's our first show of 2024.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too, Otto.
Happy and healthy New Year.
That's right.
Number one.
So this morning we have a really terrific guest, not just somebody who's a communication specialist, but somebody who is a true blue Long Islander and also from the town of North Hempstead, Tina Mosetis. So we'd like to welcome you, Tina. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're really looking forward to hearing all about, your kind of life as a Long Islander and how you came to be a communication specialist and what that all means.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you so much. So let's go ahead and start. What exactly is a communication specialist?
Well, what I do is I help businesses brand themselves and get publicity. And branding involves all different kinds of messaging because today, as you know, there are so many different kinds of outlets with social media and you standard radio, television, newspapers. And a lot of times companies have a message that's not clear or they're giving different messages on different media. And I help them get publicity and present their message in a very clear way across all the media.
Interesting. So kind of compared to when you first started in this field, it seems like you've been in this field for decades.
Yes.
And coming today now with, all the advancements in technology, what's the greatest difference that you see in terms of the way we market, we brand now, going from, maybe use just fax machines to communicate. That was such a technological advancement when I started out as well. And then, coming today where, here we are on Zoom in, 5 different locations talking to you on a radio show that's also going to be on North Hempstead television. So there's so many changes in the decades, probably since you began.
It is remarkable because in the past, companies sort of had more control in terms of the public didn't have as much access to the media. And now everybody has access to the media via all the different social media platforms. So companies have to make certain choices and they have to be even more clear about their messaging because there's so many different outlets to approach. And because people are able to communicate back via social media, they're open to more criticism. So they have to really be able, more than ever before, to communicate with individuals and be able to bring their brand in a positive way because they can't control it as much now unless they shut off social media, which is not a good idea.
It's interesting. My world is very much in tune with your world. I was always involved with communications, starting in sales when I was 21 years old, business to business. And the way it worked back then is I was in Manhattan with a company called the Dressograph Multigraph, which no longer exists, but it was a major company at that time. Things like dog tags for the military were made by a Dressograph Multigraph, as an example. And the way it used to work is we didn't have social media. You had a telephone, and you had a yellow pages maybe, and a phone book maybe. You didn't have the internet. And the way you wound up going about it was we had 30 salespeople in Manhattan alone, and you got a few blocks of your own, and you would walk through all the buildings looking for the companies that you would want to talk to. And maybe you get lucky and you could talk to somebody, but otherwise you would be doing research really to find out who you should talk to. and you had the telephone basically, and letters, direct letters, like writing. So that was the extreme end of when I started, and the change from then to now is like unbelievable, with social media. But it's also, because I'm still involved with sales coaching, in many respects more difficult, because people do not respond to emails easily. They do not respond to phone calls easily. So it's much harder to make direct contact with people than it was back then, believe it or not.
No, that's very true, Otto. But what you grew up doing is still the most important thing, in my opinion, in the world, which is personal relationships, because it's those relationships that build your business. So you can be wonderful at media, but if you're not good at personal relationships, you're not going to build your business as you should.
I agree 1,000%. The company I do the sales coaching, which is an engineering firm. And I tell you, I'm not saying anything I don't say to them, is that they don't get it. You can invent the greatest stuff on the planet, and if you don't have relationships with people to talk to about this stuff, it, I always tell them I don't see anybody pulling into the driveway or onto your factory parking lot asking you what you've got to offer. It doesn't work like that. So
That's
it's such a
exactly right.
basic premise that a lot of people just don't get it.
And the other
You know,
things that's a step, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Yes.
The other thing that's astounding to me, and I think we've all had this experience about negative customer service, because you can have the best product in the world, you can have the best messaging and branding in the world, but if the people who are answering your phones and doing your customer service are not polite or not on the ball or not properly trained, your whole image can go down the drain in a second.
Do
Yeah.
they
So it's
care?
still, yeah, yeah.
That's another topic. I mean, do they care? Or
Well,
is it a monopoly kind of thing?
no, they have to care, because even the biggest brands lose audience all the time. I mean, Verizon's had a lot of problems lately because their customer service has been so difficult. And the other thing that I believe, like if I were king of the universe, I think every CEO should have to call their own customer service with an issue, because then they'd realize how they're being represented to the public.
Good
That's a
idea.
great, yeah, I like that. I think you're right. I think they have like a reality show on that where the boss kind of comes in
All right,
Yeah,
as someone
Undercover
else.
Boss.
right,
Right,
That was
right.
a
right.
good show.
You know, it also has to be, the difference between the consumer. Also, the expectations that we have are very different than 10 years ago. I mean, even 10 years ago, with the difference is monumental. I mean, I watch the morning show sometimes, and they'll have someone come on with some kind of product, and the QR code pops up on the television, and I just bring my phone and I order it. I mean, it's just so the advancements to even think something like that. So, and I do understand, like, that's not something my mom's going to do. She does really well with, technology today because she has a laptop and a smartphone and all that. So she's at that kind of level that you would expect from someone who's kind of stayed in touch. But what's out there today, I mean, your line of business, you have to much change so many things because of all these technological advancements and the ways that, whoever your consumer is, whether it's a business, whether it's, retail shoppers, um, I can't even imagine. I mean, it's always going to be such an interesting field, communications, to me personally. But I don't know how you keep up with it all today, because also that instant gratification that you have today, you have to be able to provide that. I mean, with social media,
But
kind of
I
my
have a question.
perception.
Like, I don't think that the message of a lot of companies comes out. Like, Tina, I'd like to get your opinion on advertising today and ads on television today. Um, my 2 cents worth is there's a lot of them. I don't even know who the company is that they're advertising. I have no clue what the company does. Uh, I don't get it.
Well, you're absolutely right, and it's a pet peeve of mine, and that's what I help clients with because there's so many so-called clever ads out there, particularly on radio, where they'll tell you this funny story to grab your attention. But then I think to myself, after the funny story's over, I can't tell you what the product was.
Right.
So, it's infuriating to me as a communication specialist. And there are all these things out there, Otto, you're 1,000% right in advertising where it's all kind of glitz and catch your attention, but in the end, you don't remember what the brand is. And that's just wrong. Because one thing that's key, as I'm sure you're well aware with advertising, is repetition. And if you don't repeat, excuse me, the brand, who's going to remember it? So no matter how clever your message is, if your brand isn't apparent, it's not going to do you any good.
There's
Especially on
ads.
radio. At least on television, you could see things coming up on the screen, the product or the name across. But on
Not
radio, you have
always.
to be saying it frequently.
Yeah, not always. A lot of times you see a bunch of people doing some really stupid stuff, and then when the ad is over, my wife and I sit there and we say, "Now, what was that for?" You know,
Absolutely, absolutely right, Otto. And you'd be better off doing an iPhone interview with a kid talking about the product than doing what Otto's talking about, because in the
Right.
end, you've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on video production and spending time paying for ads that in the end don't bring you any audience. So yeah, you're 1,000% right, Otto.
yeah, and that seems like pretty basic to me. I don't get it. I don't get it. Like car companies will. One of my pet peeves is car companies put ads on, and somebody's driving like a maniac all over the place. And I'm saying that's great. That'll more maniacs driving on the road than we have now. Um, it's the messages that they're trying to get out. I don't understand. I
Well,
really don't.
maybe what they're trying to do is keep you watching until you actually find out what the product is. And then you have that aha moment. Oh, it's a Hallmark card. Oh, it's a medication, or, oh, it's a vacation spot. I guess that might be what they're hoping for, but you've got to stay on. I mean, I'm curious enough that I might stay to watch it if it's a quick commercial. I mean, if it's too long, I mean, I'm just swiping left anyway. But on it, or changing the channel, or whatever I'm on. But it's true, because today everybody wants to be gratified so quickly. You better get that product name or business right up there.
And it has to be memorable. And a lot of times those stories like you're describing or Otto's describing are not memorable, or you'll remember the story and not the brand.
Right. And sometimes they're really sad, Tina. I'm watching a lot of really sad commercials with even older people. And, age, it's almost kind of age shaming in a way. Well, the assumption is that person's old, they're forgetful, they can't remember things from the past unless you throw them in a car and take them to somewhere. And then you're still not sure what the ad's for. So, yeah,
Well,
it's
there, there-
interesting.
there's an NFL ad that was out, and I don't remember the complete details, but there's somebody up there at a funeral giving like a eulogy, and there's people standing around. Somebody had died, and the gist of this person's speech is, well, we didn't our tight end didn't catch the pass, and the quarterback didn't do this and that, and blah, blah, blah. And, and instead of talking about the funeral, they're talking about the NFL. And I thought that was like, there's probably people who are going through some grief right now. And to watch something like that is like you're treating people like an idiot, really.
There's a lot of thoughtlessness, it's true. And also, not only are they not stopping to think of who they might be insulting, offending, or making sadder, but they're not thinking about one big problem in the industry is they're finally getting hip to the 50 plus audience has a lot of money. And they need to target more toward the 50 plus community. So that's another
Absolutely.
issue.
Absolutely. I mean, we're the highest growing population there is, 50 and older. I'm so interested to hear more about your Long Island background and your starts and how you got into this field. And are you kind of more a Long Island specialist also?
No, not at all. In fact, I do a lot of international work and national work all the time. But the way I started was, well, I grew up in Great Neck, which is a fantastic town, and I was very blessed to grow up here, and it was a wonderful childhood. And then I got my graduate degree at New York Tech. So what happened is you had to do an internship as part of your graduate degree, and I did my internship at WLIW TV. And it was kind of funny because they asked me if I could do this project where the Federal Communications Commission had these things called ascertainment regulations, so community ascertainment, to see if you were giving the community what they needed. And frankly, nobody at the station wanted to do it because it was document after document of tiny print, 0.7 print, pages and pages of complications. So they're like, can you do it? I did a great job, I have to say, and I met all these community leaders. And because I got through that, they hired me at the station. And that's how I started in television, which was, oh, my first love has always been television. So I stayed there for a few years and it was a wonderful experience. And then I moved on to the American Cancer Society, where I became the director of communications and government affairs. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience because I got to work with all walks of life, every possible community you could imagine, from the most challenged communities to the wealthiest communities in the country. And I had wonderful bosses my whole career. I've been very, very lucky. They gave me free reign, basically, to do what I wanted. And we would create these fantastic events to get attention at the American Cancer Society. Some of them were very serious about how to protect yourself in early detection. And some of them were serious but fun. For example, we would do this event every year for the Great American Smokeout to get people to stop smoking for 24 hours just to show that they could do that. And I would get millions of people to stop smoking around the country with these wild events where I would do things like have Dr. Ruth on top of an elephant crushing out giant cigarettes made out of styrofoam. And that would go, nationally, sometimes internationally, just to give you the image of you can stop smoking. And we would do all these crazy things with celebrities every year. So it was a lot of fun and it was a great learning experience. And then the board members actually encouraged me to open my own business. So when I opened Mosetis Communications, a lot of the board members, many of whom were physicians, actually sent me clients. So in the beginning,
You know
I was
what?
doing a
We have to take a quick break. This seems like
Sure.
a good time to do that. We're speaking with Tina Mosetis. You're listening to Project Independence and You on Long Island LIU Public Radio. We'll be right back.
WCWP is your home for great music and great conversation. You'll find all that and more on WCWP.org. Listen live on the web, check out the lineup, subscribe to podcasts, and stay up to date on the latest station events. Get in touch with us and let us know if you like what you're hearing. And find out how you can support or get involved at the only community public radio station serving Nassau's North Shore. Plus, sign up to get a free bumper sticker. It's all online at WCWP.org.
And welcome back to Community Talk Radio. This is Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm Rebecca Miller, along with Otto Lohse and Kristina Lew. We're speaking with Tina Mosetis, who is a communication specialist, a Long Islander from Great Neck. And before the break, we were talking about what brought you into communications and also where you were at and kind of your timeline, if you will. So why don't we get back to that? And I know we're also really interested in hearing about the kinds of works that you've done with seniors, in North Hempstead. And also, I know you have some other great homegrown stories. So we want to hear all about the movie theater in Great Neck and your family. But let's just get back to where we were right before break.
Well, in terms of talking about seniors, a lot of my healthcare messaging has been directed towards seniors in terms of learning about early detection and prevention of illness. So that's a vital, many vital projects that I've worked on that really help the community that I'm very proud of. In fact, I was one of the first people many, many years ago to get the message about breast cancer awareness out there before a lot of people even knew what mammograms were. And today I continue those kinds of messages to the community. And I think seniors are becoming increasingly aware, especially because of all the media today, about how they can help themselves in the healthcare world. And that's very important. And in addition, so many seniors are still working, some because they have to, but a lot of people just want to keep working to keep their mind active, especially if they don't have particular hobbies that they're pursuing or want to pursue in retirement. So it's great that my friend Leo Pearlstein's 103, and he just got an award from the Los Angeles Public Relations Society for all his work in food communication. So God bless Leo and all the seniors out there that are working, and a lot of them are in my field, which is fantastic.
I'm so glad you brought up a really important point right before break. Well, kind of before break, about the 50 and older kind of customers and people to market to. And, like you said, and there's so many reasons to, because they're the ones that still have the money. And most older people I know, including myself, I love entertainment. I love traveling. I mean, I have a little bit more freedom to do these things. I mean, I'm still not a kind of like the older senior, but I'm getting there. And, I'm still extremely active. So I can hop into kind of some of the things a lot of the younger things are marketing to. But you would think with this population, they would understand that they're missing the mark. I mean, not all seniors want an early bird special. They want to go to the city. They want to have a dinner after theater. There are so many things that, it's just an assumptions. I think the assumptions are made, like, Otto, look at Otto. I mean, he's still working. He's golfing. He's out and traveling and family and, doing this radio show. I mean, marketing to somebody like him would be pretty smart, because I guarantee he'd be very interested in new golf clubs or other things that he's interested in, cars and that. So I'm glad to hear that you're looking toward that, and not just for the kind of new medications and, like the good stuff, we're like ready to buy. Let's, we're consumers.
I'll bet you 2/3 of the ads on television have to do with medicine, drugs.
For seniors. Really. Yeah.
They do, and it is a big mistake. And I think a lot of the problem is that corporations have blinders on, and that a lot of the decision makers in corporations are younger, and they're not thinking about the older audience where a lot of money is, a lot of disposable income is, and that's a huge mistake.
It's funny when we talked about ads, I could visualize a room, and I'm flexible because I have grandchildren and I relate to them, and great granddaughter. I can relate to them, but I could visualize the conference room with a bunch of 28-year-olds or 32-year-olds sitting around creating these ads and thinking how great they are and how hysterical they are, and yet they don't get the message out there.
You're absolutely right, Otto.
I don't get it. But then we talked about that earlier. I just don't get it. The basics to me are, why am I interested in your company? What are you going to give me that's worthwhile? And why should I even listen to what you've got to tell me?
That's it in a nutshell. And that's why a lot of times when I walk into corporations and I see exactly what you're describing, I insist on doing focus groups. But I do focus groups in slightly different way than other companies. They're not random with people who are just looking for some free food and $200. I do it with I do it with people that are really the potential audience members. And I do that specifically because corporations themselves are often not diverse enough in terms of who's giving them the input about their communications decisions. So yes, you're 1,000% right, Otto.
Well, that's another basic problem, is talking to the people who are actually going to use products. That's a good idea too. But
yeah, I guess you have to like also rebrand the senior, the older population completely. And, as consumers with deep pockets. I mean, that just might be a way to look at it. It's just not a sexy market, and you got to make it that way because
it's sexy if you want money.
right, exactly, and that's pretty sexy, I think, in marketing and for all these businesses that would like customers. So yeah, so it's great that you're out there and you've got that, and that's a very important message, especially for our residents and nationwide. But I do want to hear a little bit more about you growing up. We love background stories, especially some raised in Great Neck and North Hempstead, and what's the story with the movie theater? I was reading up a little bit about how that came into your life.
My mom ran the movie theater from the time she was a very young woman, and she ran it her whole career. So for decades, everybody in Great Neck knew the lady that ran the Squire and the Playhouse theaters. Unfortunately, the Squires, the Playhouse closed many years ago, but the Squire closed recently, which is really not good for our town because that made it a destination town. And growing up in the movie theater was a wonderful experience because I started working there when I was like 13. And there was free popcorn and free movies and free soda, and you really couldn't ask for a better childhood. And then I stayed there working quite some time. Even when I was a professional in the city, I would come back to help. But it was a lot of fun because Great Neck had a lot of celebrities here, and celebrities from out of town would come in. And there's a great story about my mom and how many of the celebrities really liked her and would come to visit her. People like Irwin Corey, who lived in town, and Alan King. And there were so many people. Mickey Mantle would come into the theater, you name it. And so it was just a lovely place to grow up and experience all these different kinds of people and have that atmosphere of joy, and it was just a fabulous experience.
You rang a memory bell on mine with Professor Irwin Corey. I saw him in San Francisco. I think the name of the place was the Purple Onion, and he stuck in my head as one of the funniest people I've ever seen. And that was a long time ago. But I read your material, and I didn't realize that he was from Great Neck and that he actually performed in Great Neck.
He did. In fact, he did an impromptu performance in the theater the night of the moon landing. He just
Wow.
got up in the audience and did an impromptu performance. And I can tell you a very sweet story about Andy Kaufman. I was working as a cashier, and Andy came up and asked to speak to the manager, who was my mom. I said, I'm sorry, she's out to dinner. And long story short, he came back and forth a few times trying to figure out how he was going to talk to her. He said, when will she be back? I said, probably in about an hour or so. And he said, I just want to thank her. She was always so nice to me. And A, that was very kind that he did that. But B, I didn't realize the importance of it until he'd passed 6 months later. He had sought her out to thank her before he died, which was incredible.
Great.
What were some of the movies that you've have the most fond memories of?
One of my favorites, I don't know if you would remember this, is My Favorite Year. My Favorite Year was a comedy, and you can still see it, I believe, on Netflix, and it's just got a lot of big names in it, and it's absolutely hysterical and heartwarming. And of course, there was Zorba the Greek, since I'm Greek.
Oh,
yeah. That made a big impact on me. And let's see, what else did I really, really love? Oh, there's so many. It's hard to pinpoint them, but just I'm a big movie fan because I grew up in the movie theater.
I'm sure it was such a special time back then.
It was, and there used to be lines around the corner. Really, the lines would be 2 blocks long, and I was very proud as a young girl, as a cashier, because I could get that line in very quickly.
That's so cute.
But now, unfortunately, we need to have more destination locations here in town and in other towns so that we get the commercial traffic. And it was really a place for the community to come together after the theater. Everybody would stand outside and talk about the movie and where they were going to dinner, and then they would fill the restaurants in town. And it was a place for everybody to gather, right. No matter what their background was, they would meet at the movie theater. So it was a very happy place.
That's another world. I'm sorry, that's another world that's changed dramatically. Like I grew up in Woodhaven in Queens, borderline of Brooklyn, and there was a theater there called the Haven Theater. And I can remember going there for 4 cents on a Saturday and see 25 cartoons, two movies, all kinds of stuff. But just like hardware stores and Home Depot, movie theaters and mega theaters kind of shot each other. The mega theaters shot that little theaters, and now the mega theaters are having big problems. We went to the movies last week to see Wonka, and there were two people in there besides us in this huge theater. Uh, yeah, I don't know how that's going to last, truthfully. But anyhow, off the track. But the point being that that world has changed dramatically.
What they're trying to do now, Otto, and I hope it works, is they're trying to make theaters more all-encompassing so that you'll be able to go there, have dinner, possibly play games. They're, putting the recliners in so people are super comfortable, like they're in their home. So hopefully that'll make them a destination place again, because everybody loves the theater experience. And unfortunately, with COVID, it knocked a lot of the business out. And the streaming of all these different films and TV shows has also hurt it. But I don't think there's any denying that people love being in a group and enjoying with an audience what's being presented. So hopefully it'll make a comeback with all the changes they're making in terms of making it a destination again.
It's so expensive, movies too. It's cost prohibitive. I mean, if you're going on a date and you're a younger person, and you want to do a movie and dinner to these days, it's such a fortune. I did want to ask if you remember what you charged when you first kind of started working in the theater.
Well, I actually have a really spooky memory back to childhood. And I remember all kinds of crazy things. I remember it used to be when I was a little girl, like about 5 years old, I think an adult was $2.75 and a child was 75 cents. And they actually had a children's section in the movie theater.
Oh gosh. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did they have matrons?
They did. They had
Yeah.
matrons and many ushers, many ushers.
Yeah,
Yes. That's
I
exactly
remember
right. They had
matrons.
matrons.
I do remember
Yes.
4 cents, honestly. It was, I'm talking in the late 40s, early 50s. Yeah, it was,
How
you
much
were
was
there
that,
all
Otto?
day. And when you came out of the movie theater, the sun was like blinding. You couldn't,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
you were
that
in the
was
dark
another
for so
thing.
long.
Back in the day, you could easily stay in a movie multiple times, or not that I would ever do it, or that I have a real memory of doing it, or, sneaking into another movie and catching like a double header.
Yeah, well, we had double features when I was a kid.
Right.
Of course, that doesn't
Mhm.
happen anymore. So, could park your kids in the movie theater for 4 hours and not worry about it.
I
I
was the one
know,
who was
right?
parked.
Me too.
I
Me
was a
too.
parkee.
It was a great experience, and I miss that a lot. And again, I do hope they'll make a comeback.
So I hear that you're also working on a book.
Yes, I'm doing a book on communications because even though that's my business and I generally work with nonprofits or corporations, I do entrepreneurs as well. Um, I think just for individuals, not for businesses, it's important to learn how to speak with people because a lot of people could be kind, but they still don't know how to approach people, even with their kindness, in terms of the language that they use, or if you're in a work situation where somebody's angry, they don't know how to approach their colleague or their subordinate about what the issue is. And if we can learn to use the right demeanor and the right language to speak to people, we'll be more effective in actually getting what we want. So I'm writing a book about tips, about easy tips about how to deal with one another via communications and get what you want.
I
How
love that
about a tip?
idea.
I love it.
I read that you're going to have a book like that, and even though I've been in it all my life, I still like to read stuff about it because you always pick up a little something.
That's
When
right. You
it's
learn from everybody. That's true.
yeah, and the other part of it is I look back in my life about communication, and the best class I ever took was I went to college at night to Pace, and I took the first business communications class I ever took, and I still remember it to this day. It talked about speech and writing and whatever, and which made me think we fail in the education system that we should really have training in communications starting in the younger grades, and then in like high school, we ought to have a class on communications, you know, with your friends, with your family, and potential business world. Um, I think it would be very, very valuable to provide that in school.
Otto, I'm voting for you for president because when you think about that, if children learned how to communicate properly when they were very young, we would avoid tremendous conflict in the family. I think we could avoid war if people learned how to communicate better. So I think that's a fantastic idea, and I wish they would incorporate it into the school system.
On that note, I think we're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
You're listening to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio. We're speaking with Tina Mosetis, and we will be right back.
Take WCWP with you wherever you go with the WCWP app. Listen live 24/7 to all of our streams, all from one app. Plus, call the studios directly from the app and visit our social media. Download the app through the iOS App Store on Apple devices or the Google Play Store on Android by searching WCWP Radio, or visit WCWP.org for links. The WCWP app, available now on iOS and Android devices.
Welcome back to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio. I'm Rebecca Miller along with Otto Lohse and Kristina Lew, and we're speaking with Tina Mosetis about, she's a communication specialist, but really talking about a timeline of Tina's life, and she's written books and she's worked in some wonderful organizations on Long Island and across the country and maybe even around the world. Most recently talking about her book, but I'd love to hear about some of the businesses. And you mentioned one of my favorite words, entrepreneurship. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you support that. And then one other thing I want to hear are some of these great tips that are coming out of your book that would be helpful for our listeners to kind of, maybe follow through on. So I know that's a lot. So
That's okay.
Wherever you want to jump in.
All right, we'll start big and we'll go get a little smaller. So I've represented huge companies like PayPal, Skype, eBay, Rebel Mouse, you name it. That's always wonderful because they have a lot of money to spend on branding, et cetera. But then there's people who are just starting out in business, and some of them can be senior citizens. And so when it's to me, I love challenges. So one of my favorite clients, I used to do a lot of lecturing, and I was lecturing at NYU. And a young man called me after the class and said, "Can you help me? I'm starting a nonprofit. It was to help charity, but it was also a business." And so that kind of project's very exciting to me because you take somebody from kind of zero to building a business, and it's a wonderful feeling. And it's a challenge that I enjoy. So you educate people about how to put their website together. I'm not a tech person per se, but I write copy that's consumer friendly. I teach them how to put a press kit together. I help them coordinate the media interviews, et cetera. So I love that. And in addition, in terms of the book and communications tips, I think one of the big issues people have, because like Otto said, we're not taught this in school, is particularly when you're dealing with an angry family member or you're dealing with an angry colleague, or say you're a boss and somebody's upsetting you because they're not doing the job the way you think they should be doing it. How do you approach that person? And anger is not the way to approach it. And no matter how annoying somebody might be, you have to sort of put yourselves in their shoes and think like, why are they behaving like that? Is it that they don't know better? Is it that they're scared? Is it they don't understand what they're supposed to be doing? Try to sort that out in your brain first. And always start a conversation, no matter how upset you are. First of all, deep breathing is a real thing that psychiatrists and psychologists teach. So you want to calm yourself down before you approach anybody. And you want to put yourself in their shoes. And then you want to think to yourself, what is it I want out of the conversation I'm about to start? And you should always approach on a positive note, saying, I know that you're trying hard, and I want you to realize that our goals are such and such, and or what I want to relay to you, say if it's a personal relationship, is such and such. And I think there's ways we can achieve this together because I know you're capable of doing this. Take it on that note, take it on a positive note. And because a lot of times your colleague or your subordinate, so to speak, is scared. And by going in with an angry tone, they're just going to get their back up. They're not going to be really listening to you, and they're not going to want to comply with you. So if you go in with a tone of understanding and helping, and you trying to figure out where they're coming from and what their fears might be, or where they need skill training, you're going to get a lot more out of the employee, and you're going to get a loyal employee, which is essential.
You know,
Right. I can't. I know that we had a guest on the show. Oh, go ahead, Otto.
no, it made me think about it's like role playing, like where you play through something before, so you don't blow it when you get the chance to do something. We used to do that in the sales world all the time, practice, and they don't do things like that anymore. They, they really don't. And I've talked to people who are in sales now, and most of them never went to a class, even one class for
It's
sales.
crazy.
And,
It's
and I
completely
went to
crazy.
all kinds of classes. It's a skill, it's a profession, and
Right.
it's not treated that way. So most sales positions now, the people who are in them do not come across very well, in my opinion. You know,
And Otto, do you find it's kind of hit and run, like get the sale or don't get and get in and out, as opposed to building relationships?
yes, definitely, and that's a huge mistake. I was always in long-term type stuff. We were selling systems, business systems, all kinds of computers. I mean, I have a list this long of the different things that we sold, uh, and it was always pretty basic. You know, do you need it? No. Well, then let's go bye bye. There's no need for you. Then we won't waste each other's time. Yet there are people that insist on talking to you about something which I have absolutely no interest in. Um, you know, I could talk for hours on this topic, unfortunately, and I'll suck up a lot of the time of this
No, it's
show.
great. It's
Then
It
great.
is.
there's things like writing a proposal. You want somebody to spend a couple of $1 million. Do you write a proposal that tells them, why they should want to do this, and how much is it going to cost, and what do we do next step? They don't write proposals anymore. Everything is like a quick email with this much in it, and it, it just doesn't make sense.
Otto, you
And
really should be president. You know, Otto is so unique in that when he is a true believer in a program, a product, and then he becomes that ambassador for that program or product. I mean, you put everything into it. And I see, I mean, the beauty of it. And I appreciate it so much. And that's part of the reason why I love you so much. But I feel like today we lose that with so much instant gratification, but it's so important. Like, I find that salespeople today are very nice. Oh, yes, can I help you? But there's not that relationship build. Like if I go to Best Buy and I want to, like, I'm buying an expensive laptop or pad or something, and I talk to somebody who's very nice and very knowledgeable, I want to know that I come back. Oh, last time I was here, Tina was so helpful. And, oh, she's with somebody else, but I'll help you. And it's like, you don't have that. Like, that's kind of what you're
They
missing.
probably weren't trained.
The only place
yeah,
I
the
have that is with
connection,
my salon.
Rebecca,
But
you're 1,000% right. It's that connection. And
right.
unfortunately, I think part of what's happened with the media, because there are so many outlets and everybody's on their cell phone all day long, everybody has ADD. And it's what Otto was saying about emails being very short. So even me, when I have friends that are, excellent writers, and they'll write me like a 2-page email, and I'm like, I don't even want to read a 2-page email about something when they could just,
Give me like
it's,
3 bullets.
we
That's
all
another
have,
subject.
yeah.
Communications, emails. I actually taught a class on that right before I retired, uh, semi-retired. About managing email and how do you use it. Like you said, the 2-page email gets right in the old dump in time pile. Uh, Communications. I mean, it's just a very
It's everything.
yeah, it is.
Tina, we're scraping on so many tops of things that we love to talk about. We don't really talk about a lot too. And I just love, even the thing that Otto was saying about bringing communication to younger people. And what I think is more socialization without technology. Like, how do you keep people, that part of the brain still functioning? We talk about this all the time. I grew up at a library, I had research. Even today, if I say her name, I can't say her name because she'll answer. I want to find out something. It's boom, here's the answer, and that's what kids today are growing up with, this instant gratification. Now, chances are that's how it's going to be in their future. So, is it worth it to kind of say, well, this is what I did growing up? But I think it's important to be, regardless of technology, to be able to communicate and socialize and understand just regular human cues. And one of the things you were saying, Tina, too, when you talk to someone, and I don't want to take over the whole show, but I'm so excited about all the things we're talking about. So, just do one of those things to me if I'm going too much. Dan, I know he's cringing right now. Is when you were talking about when someone's very angry, and they come at you, it's a feeling too. And you can't come back with somebody and say, no, don't feel that way. It's basically what you're doing. So there was a guest, we talked about this, Kristina, I don't know, it was a while ago, years, about not being reactive, but proactive. Listen to what they're saying. Don't respond to someone who's angry, because that's how they're feeling. They're telling you, I feel angry right now, regardless of what they're saying. And you're going to come back and say, well, you shouldn't have that feeling, but don't tell me you had fun. So, you have to kind of, like you were saying, be more empathetic. Why is that person so upset? Is it really that they dropped something, or is it that something triggered something else? I mean, obviously you want to not kind of go into some deep therapeutic time span, but, just kind of be more understanding.
Yeah, but you used one magic word in there, listen. All right. Sales, I used to go out on calls with people and whatnot, and they say to me, you do the curbside review with people, and they'd say, well, how do you think that call went? I said, it really went very poorly. You didn't listen to a word they said. You kept talking. You were so excited about telling them about how great you are and your product is. You didn't listen to anything. You have no idea what that person was really interested in. So the word listen is another one that, is you use this, but you use this like they always say, there's two of these and there's one of these.
And if you listen, you understand the consumer. I know, right? And if you listen, you understand the consumer or whatever the person so much better, instead of trying to sell them what you think they should have, whatever it is, a service, a product, an idea.
Yes, and in my business, and you guys know exactly what you're talking about. In my business, and really in relationships, what Otto's saying about listening is when I'm talking to a potential client, I'm not just going to be talking about my history and everything I've done and my successes. I'm going to be listening for what their needs are. Because if I can't fulfill their needs, there's no point in working together. So that's the most important thing when I'm listening to a client, whether it's a nonprofit or a big corporation. What is it they're looking to accomplish? What are their needs? What are their goals? And that's how we can work together. But if I'm not listening, I'll never know that.
Yeah, I used to spend a lot of time on what I call ICI, intelligent customer interviewing. Yeah, what kind of questions? I used to spend like, I'd call on companies like NCR or IBM or whatever. And the call may only be an hour. And I spend 10 hours preparing for the call, about what are we going to talk about? What do we want to learn? And like you described, Tina, you have to ask the questions, but you should be prepared. But in life, it's not a bad idea to ask people questions. I mean, I have some dear friends that, when I go with them, I know 98% of the talking is going to be them, so I just, okay, that's the way it is, it's not really a conversation. It's more of a listening class, if you will, but it's the way it is. I mean, you accept a friend as they are. if you have other things that you happen to share that you get along with. But it's true in business too. Some people, or life in general, some people just don't listen. You know.
You're absolutely right. And the other point that you're making, Otto, which is very important, is research. Whether you're going for a job interview or you're going to buy a house or you're going to get a new client, to do your research about the item that you're involved in. If you're buying a house, you want to do research about the town, about the school system, et cetera. If you're going to get a client, you want to do research about that company before you speak with them. And even if it's an impersonal relationship, when you first meet somebody, you don't know what their history is. You don't know where they're coming from. And it's not exactly research, quote unquote, but in a way it is when you start to delve into their background and why they think the way they think and the way they were raised, then you understand people better and you understand your businesses better.
Yeah.
I know that we're probably coming close to the end of this last segment, but I'm wondering if you could share a few great tips for our listeners from your book.
Yes. Well, because we're sort of targeting a senior market here, it's an overused expression, but the truth is 60 is the new 40. So no matter what your age is, no matter what your age is, the fact is you can accomplish what you want to accomplish if you focus, set your mind to it, and find your resources. So I think the tip is to set your goal and then set a list of how you're going to go about accomplishing your goals in terms of finding the right people that could help you, et cetera. In fact, one of my clients wrote her first book and she's in her 80s. And it's a great book and it's getting great reviews. So don't ever let age hold you back. And my tip would be that in terms of communications, it's exactly summing up a lot of what the points Otto made, is to do the research about whatever it is you want to communicate about. If it's a person and the problems they're having, if it's a business that you're working with, if it's a new project you're going after, do the research about that field. And this is what I tell young people when I lecture: surround yourself with the best and the brightest. Surround yourself with people that can help you in your goals. And even if it's having an issue with a family member, a colleague, or a friend, talk to other people who are good communicators and say, this is what's happening. How do you think I should handle it? And get advice from really bright people who are good at what they do. So whether it's a personal relationship or a business relationship, you want to surround yourself with people who have the experience. And that's always going to help you in your business and in your personal communications.
Great advice. And what do you know? We are at the end of this segment. Tina, thank you so much for joining us today. Really great to get to know you, hear about your background. A Long Islander, a great neck right here in our own town of North Hempstead, mother's history here with the movie theater, and just all that you've accomplished. It's wonderful. I think we could go on for hours. I don't even want to say goodbye, but for now we have to. I'm sure we'll be having you back in some capacity. I see Kristina's taking notes. So again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you all so much. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Yeah, really nice.
You're listening to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio.